What's an unfun fact? Suicide bombers are a lot easier to identify post-mortem than you'd expect. This is because a blast from the suicide belt hits the base of the head in such a way that the head pops off like a cork. Investigators therefore have a relatively intact head to ID. Edit. Thanks for the gold, kind stranger. In response to speculation in the comments, I'd like to say that I am not a veteran, a forensics expert, or a gore site editor, and I have not witnessed this in person, although I have seen a couple of photos. I'm just a true crime guy who looked into the forensics after the St. Petersburg and Manchester bombings in 2017. My original source was a quote by journalist Joby Warwick. Tapeworms can grow up to 32 feet inside of you and they eat half of what you eat. That brain-eating amoebas exist at all, and is also pretty commonly found in freshwater ponds and lakes. Apparently only 4 people have survived getting it in the last 50 years. Piper Perry, the girl on the couch with 5 black guys behind her meme, came home from a shoot one night to find that her boyfriend had shaken her toddler to death. Female ducks get raped so frequently that they have a second decoy V that they can offer to intruders so they don't get pregnant by the duck they don't want to get pregnant by. Edit. Holy it, this blew up. Thank God it was about duck pussies. Wouldn't have wanted to waste it on something stupid. There are at least 8 nuclear weapons known to be missing. Edit. Just woke up to this. Thank you for the awards. And thank you for wishing me a happy cake day. When preparing a body for an open casket, the mortician will sew the person's jaw shut to keep their mouth from flopping open, and place special contact lenses on the eyes lined with hooks, both to keep the eyelid from snapping open due to shrinking tissues, and to give the eye a bit more natural bulge, as the eye tends to sink into the socket after death. Only 1 in every 1,000 sea turtles born ever make it to adulthood. Whales don't die of old age. Eventually they just don't have the strength to resurface and slowly drown. You have a higher chance of dying on the way to get a lottery ticket than actually winning. In 2014 the CDC once found a smallpox sample that they had lost and didn't even know it. It was just laying around in some random storeroom. There is a whale called 52 Blue that only sings at that frequency, meaning it can't communicate with other whales. It is nicknamed the loneliest whale on the planet. People who handle cockroaches develop allergies to them. This usually prevents them from drinking pre-ground coffee because of the cockroaches that get grounded in with the large batches. There are more slaves today than any time in history. Anyone can have a brain aneurysm at any age, no matter your health situation. Touching an AM radio broadcast tower will kill you. And not only will it kill you, but it will hurt the entire time you're dying. Number 1. The voltage is so high that your hands would instantly clamp to whatever charged part of the tower you touched. Then because it's oscillating at a frequency your cells can't feel, you wouldn't be able to feel yourself being electrocuted until it starts to heat your body from the current. And you'd also be able to hear your body acting as a speaker where you'd literally be able to hear whatever was on that particular station as you die. Here's an example of the sheer power running through one of these things. Edit. Since people asked, touching an FM broadcast tower won't have nearly the same effect. The tower is hundreds of feet high, and unlike AM radio where the tower itself is the antenna, the actual antenna is only about 20-30 feet long at the very top. Also FM radio uses a lot lower power, only usually 100 watts, compared to AM radio where usually 1000-50,000 watts are used. So unless you climb all the way to the top of the tower, there's no danger of any burns. Also, in regard to 5G, as stated previously, AM radio uses an incredible amount of power. 5G uses so much less power, on the order of 1-15 watts. Also, radio waves are considered non-ionizing radiation, meaning the only danger with them is a small heating effect at higher frequencies, kinda like a microwave. But also keep in mind that your microwave uses 1500 watts. This is because the wavelength of these radio waves is literally too big to interact with your cells in any way. There's no danger whatsoever here. The power depicted in that video comes from the electricity flowing through the tower. not the radio waves themselves. Cockroaches stab their mates with their barbed insect and come in the lady cockroach wound. Fatal familial insomnia exists. It's a rare, incurable prionic brain disease that progressively destroys your brain's ability to sleep. Eventually you stop sleeping altogether, go insane, have seizures, and die. Deep sea octopus babies take 5+ years to hatch, while mama octopus never leaves the nest to feed and dies when the babies hatch. She doesn't eat for 5+ years. Edit. Oh my, this really blew up. Many of you pointed out the source already. It is from Radiolab Optimum episode. I highly recommend. The female tarantula hawk wasp stings a tarantula between the legs, paralyzes it, then drags the prey to a specially prepared burrow, where a single egg is laid on the spider's abdomen, and the entrance is covered. 6 of the larvae is determined by fertilization. Fertilized eggs produce females, while unfertilized eggs produce males. When the wasp larva hatches, it creates a small hole in the spider's abdomen, then enters and feeds voraciously, avoiding vital organs for as long as possible to keep the spider alive. After several weeks, the larvae are pupates. Finally, the wasp becomes an adult and emerges from the spider's abdomen to continue the life cycle. Scuba divers can experience a sudden change in pressure when swimming near pipes and will get sucked inside. Doesn't matter the size of the hole. It's called delta P. Worst part? Someone else usually has to go inside the pipe to remove the body. Depends on what you find as fun, but King Henry VI exploded in his coffin while the grave was being dug. The mess was cleared up by stray dogs. Judith Barcy, the little girl who voice acted Ducky in The Land Before Time, was murdered by her father at age 10. All they found of her and her mother were charred remains. The father shot himself after. Edit. I feel guilty now for spreading this sad fact so widely. Sorry to the many childhoods I'm told I have retroactively ruined. Tree star. A single female tiger killed 436 people in India. She is known as the Champort tiger. Wikipedia. When a male bee drone ejaculates, its testicles explode and the drone dies. It is literally a one-shot wonder. When your skin becomes red from spending too much time under the sunlight, it's basically because your skin cells are committing suicide to avoid becoming cancerous. Edit. Source: the process is called apoptosis, and when cells whose DNA gets messed up by UV radiation doesn't commit suicide, that's when it starts growing out of control and thus becomes skin cancer. I'm no expert, but many medical students and professionals I know have told me this is how it works, perhaps in an oversimplified manner. Dolphins in captivity usually commit suicide by suffocating themselves. Famous example, Flipper. This is a terrible thread to go through before bed. Brushtail possums are coprophagic, eat their own it. They need their food to go through their digestive system twice to get all the nutrients. They're nocturnal, so spend the night eating eucalyptus and other plant leaves and flowers. During the day, they curl up into a little ball with their mouths close to their bums and eat the soft poo as it comes out in. Then while they're out at night, they poo out hard, long pellets of poo, having absorbed all the nutrients. There could be some planets swimming in the deep space without suns and even without galaxies, and you can't even see stars from their surface. Absolute darkness. As dead bodies decay, they burp or release gases. For this reason, caskets and mausoleums need to be ventilated so that the gas can escape. You may have heard that South Koreans have a superstition called fan death, where if you keep a fan on too long it will kill you. The history of its origins is much darker. When people committed suicide and the coroner had to determine cause of death, they would say it was death by fan. This is to save the face of the family and not cause them shame. It eventually became a superstition and one that Westerners find funny. A human tooth has 36 calories. Deforestation in the Amazon got up 55% from January to April. Every unborn baby grows a mustache in the womb, which then spreads to cover the entire body. The baby then eats the entire hair called lanugo, and excretes it after birth with their first bowel movement. which is a substance called meconium. Marlin in Finding Nemo should really turn into a woman and Nemo becomes the husband. That's what happens when the female dies. When the gas chambers were first assembled and experimented with at the Auschwitz concentration camp, the SS soldiers that oversaw the process found that the people inside would start screaming as soon as the gas agent was dropped in. The screaming was so loud that it could be heard through the thick walls of the building, and the victims would continue screaming over the course of 20 minutes until it gradually faded to nothing. The screaming disturbed the soldiers, believe it or not, so they tried to think of a way to drown out the noise so they didn't have to hear it. Their idea was to get 2 motorcycles and rev the engines as loudly as they could at the same time during those 20 minutes. It didn't work. Pretty much any fact about koalas counts as an unfun fact. They're like an evolutionary train wreck. For example, they eat only 2 things which are an incredibly toxic plant and their own it, and it eating gave most of them chlamydia. Squirrels will eat baby birds and horses will eat baby chicks if given the chance. The most common last words that are said before dying is typically something doesn't feel right or something is wrong, of course, followed by a severe heart attack, stroke, whatever. MR. Stuck. I don't feel so good. Male cats have spines on their Ds that rake the walls of a female's V to trigger ovulation and to hold the female in place while mating. On average 12 children are sexually assaulted every 45 seconds. Edit. This blew up overnight. First comments to get over 1k upvotes. For advice, some of my friends and family work in the police and child protection services. This is the number they told me. Your nipples are older than your teeth. The Zodiac killer could have been caught numerous times if not for San Francisco police dispatch incompetence. This article on waitbutwe.com is full of unfun facts, but if you read it, maybe you can take action against it. It's called The Tail End. Here's an especially unfun excerpt. I've been thinking about my parents, who are in their mid-60s. During my first 18 years, I spent some time with my parents during at least 90% of my days, but since heading off to college and then later moving out of Boston, I've probably seen them an average of only 5 times a year each, for an average of maybe 2 days each time, 10 days a year, about 3% of the days I spent with them each year of my childhood, being in their mid-60s. Let's continue to be super optimistic and say I'm one of the incredibly lucky people to have both parents alive into my 60s. That would give us about 30 more years of coexistence. If the 10 days a year thing holds, that's 300 days left to hang with mom and dad. Less time than I spent with them in any one of my 18 childhood years. When you look at that reality, you realize that despite not being at the end of your life, you may very well be nearing the end of your time with some of the most important people in your life. If I lay out the total days I'll ever spend with each of my parents, assuming I'm as lucky as can be, this becomes starkly clear. It turns out that when I graduated from high school, I had already used up 93% of my in-person parent time. I'm now enjoying the last 5% of that time. We're in the tail end. There's a species of river dolphin and there are less than 10 in the world. Everyone loves river dolphins. Your lips are made of the same skin as your anus. Do you have lips on your ass? Or an anus for a mouth? The atrocities that the Belgians committed in Congo during their colonial rule. Most of the people still don't know about it. Picture like the one below is an example of the barbaric Belgian rule. Father stares at the hand and foot of his 5-year-old, severed as a punishment for failing to make the daily rubber quota. Belgian Congo, 1904. There are a lot of bug parts that we eat in our food without knowing. One day your mother put you down and has never picked you back up again. It takes longer to say www than it does to say World Wide Web. I'll give you 2. The most common cause of death for tall people is a heart attack, brought on by the fact that their hearts just naturally have to work harder than average to circulate all that blood through that larger body. Left-handed people are most likely to die in an accident involving a power tool, because they are all designed by right-handed people. For right-handed people, I'm tall, 6 feet 6.5 inches or 1.98 m. And I'm left-handed. Which one will it be for me? Edit. Yay. My first ever award. I got a yikes. Thank you. Generous Redditor. Edit 2. The most upvotes I've ever had by far. And now 4 awards. Thank you. Fellow Redditors. Around 1.5 million people die from TB annually, which is a disease consistently treatable by antibiotics in almost all cases. There are only 2 states in the US that have outlawed child marriage. One of them only just put it into law a few weeks ago. 23 states don't even have an age limit on marriage. The first responder to die in 911 was killed by someone jumping out of the building and landing on them. Ted Bundy's D was 8 inches long. The sun is becoming hotter, and in about a billion years, the oceans will boil off and our atmosphere will be unable to sustain any form of life. It's been almost an hour and no one has mentioned that the human arsehole expands wide enough for a raccoon to fit in it. That's usually the first fact that people post on these daily fact asks. Bunnies eat their own poop regularly, often directly from their ass. Dead people can get goosebumps. The cat on the cover of Unfun, Jawbreaker's 1990 debut album, was named after Sammy Davis, Jr. The moon is slowly moving away from the earth, meaning in the future people will only be able to see a small light. Saturn's rings, whilst beautiful, were created by Saturn literally ripping our icy moon apart, causing the pieces to spread out, forming a ring. After a while, large bits of debris pulled in lesser bits and formed the moons that carved out the lines. Jupiter's eye is shrinking, meaning the red spot will one day be gone. The star known as Betelgeuse, can never spell it, will have, or at some point will go supernova, and we'll see that after the light reaches here. It'll light up the sky as bright as day for a while. Okay, I don't know unfun facts. A wandering black hole with sufficient mass could easily pull the sun and or any planets away from their normal orbits. And these particular black holes wander, hence their names. So one could pass by at any time and we would be screwer. Your voice on recordings is actually how your voice really sounds. Your voice in your head is a bit muffled and deeper, because the sound travels through your head instead of the air. That's why it feels weird to hear your own voice recorded. Edit. Actually, your recorded voice is a bit high pitched. It takes a very good microphone to capture your real voice, but the one in your head is, most of the time, way off. Parvovirus can infect dogs and cats at any particular age and kill them pretty efficiently. It's especially good at doing this with puppies. There's no cure and no antiviral, just boosters and hydration IV you can give them. When a dog comes home healthy from the recovery from a parvo infection, they're contagious for 2 weeks, and if they pee, poop or vomit anywhere at all, including dog parks, that freaking virus is able to survive for up to a year, including in 100+ degree weather. Parvovirus sucks. There are more tigers held in captivity in the USA than in the wild across the world. Each day, 43 children are diagnosed with a cancer in the United States, which means 15,590 children are in the US are diagnosed each year. Cancer is the leading cause of death by disease in American children, resulting in the death of approximately 1,800 kids each year. Edit. Blue. Another unfun fact: as I'm sitting here reading this thread about cancer, my dog is dying from it. I'm pretty much devastated. I'm currently at a loss to explain how I feel about the fact that my comment about cancer has blown up at exactly this moment. Do me a favor, Reddit. Send a little positive mental vibes to my sweet boy before you go to sleep, and cherish the things you have while they're here. I know how ducking corny this might seem to some of ya, but I'm just so ducking broken and I want to put out something positive from my situation. Bananas are slightly radioactive. The next Einstein could have very well been born, but never had access to proper resources to grow. It's still 2020. When you clean a vacuum cleaner, you become the vacuum cleaner. During World War I, the British intelligence service created a propaganda campaign that said the Germans were boiling their dead to extract fat and produce nitroglycerine to replenish their dwindling supply. This lie was exposed after the war and there was a considerable amount of public outrage. When similar reports came back of the atrocities that the Nazis were committing during World War II, most people dismissed them because of the boy who cried wolf situation 20 years earlier and really damaged the public opinion of the war, which no one wanted to repeat in the first place. If left without food long enough, your cat will eat your dead body. More Americans died in 2 months from COVID-19 than 10 years of Vietnam. After experiencing the symptoms of rabies, there is no going back. You are dying 100%. The hyena's bite has a pressure of 1,100 pounds per square inch, 76 kg per square centimeter or 760 newtons per square centimeter. When Hitler was 4 years old, he fell into a pond next to a church and nearly drowned. However, the priest jumped in and saved his life. To think that World War II and the Holocaust, as well as modern history as a whole, could have been prevented if not for that man is mind-blowing. Romeo and Juliet was a 3-day fling, not a love story. You're being run by a ball of flesh and electricity. Most people will live and die with none or barely any influence on the future of our planet. Anne Frank's diary had details of masturbation in it, yet it was taken out by her father before publishing until recently. Scallops have eyes, around 200 under the shelly lip. A coronal mass ejection, CME, is a powerful burst of energy from the sun, disrupting electronics and causing blackouts. The last time one hit Earth, it ignited telegraphs on fire. We are due for one every 150 years. The last one hit in 1859. These solar storms are a release of plasma, physics, and accompanying magnetic field from the solar corona. Wait a minute. Edit. I'm told we're due to be hit by one every 150 years. They happen quite frequently and miss Earth all the time. America still has lead in most of its pipes and walls. My doggo died 3 days ago. Rip Bella. There's about 2,500 languages which have died out and or are being less and less used with each passing day. Eskimo women suck the snot out of their baby's nose. Edit. With their mouth. Edit 2. Other cultures do this as well. I know they have tools for the job. Please stop telling me your personal baby snot in mouth experiences.